Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about what to consider when choosing images so that you find the best possible images for your work. Stick around to find out why images are so important, what makes a good image, and where to find quality images that you can legally use. When you look for images for your design work, how much time do you spend looking for the right image? The one that takes into account the relevance, the style, how it will be used, and so forth, so that it has the most impact. Images play a huge role in our graphic design work. It's about selecting the right images to tell a story, to evoke a feeling, to provoke an action, and to connect with the reader. The wrong or poor quality images can really hurt those efforts. So I want to give you some really good tips for finding good images for your design projects. First, let's get into why images are so important in the first place. Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Everyone knows that saying, and it's true. We can process so much information from a photograph in just a few seconds. But it takes much longer to read or to have something read to us to get that same information. And people comprehend information in different ways, and images are more effective for some people. Plus, they're more memorable than words. Images can also help us understand information. Think about infographics. Someone can try to describe in words alone how something works, right? Or we can use images or icons to help demonstrate this. This makes things so much clearer, so much easier to understand. And images also create an emotional connection. They are much more personal. It's harder for words to do that. Think about those animal shelter commercials with Sarah McLachlan. Don't the photos of the shelter animals just gut you? I mean, I donate to local rescues and shelters as it is, and I volunteered with some too. Like, that's my big cause. So those photos just totally gut me. And that's what they want. They want you to be affected by these images. When our design work reaches people on that emotional level, it connects with them. And when that happens, they're more likely to take the intended action from that design, whether that's to buy something, or to donate, or to share a post, to volunteer, or something else. Let's say you're working on a design project where there's a lot of data. For example, financial data in an annual report. Something very cut and dry. But maybe the point of sharing this data is to show the effort spent on fundraising and how donations are desperately needed for the organization to continue their work. Could you present this information in tables? Sure. Pie charts? Yeah. Either will do the job to convey the information. But if you were to present that same information with photos or icons, something more visual and personal, think of how much more of an impact that would have. As I always say, graphic design serves a purpose. It's not art for art's sake. Another thing is that images entice us to read. What would you rather sit down and read? The dictionary or a magazine? One is a bunch of text, and small at that. And one includes a lot more visuals. Images also give your eyes a break. Tons of text without images or enough white space can feel overwhelming. Someone is more likely to read something with images than a ton of text. Images encourage sharing on social media. This is crucial for social media posts, where the sole purpose is to get engagement and to get shares and get likes, so they get more attention and reach more people. Posts with images get more engagement than text-only posts. Facebook posts with images get as much as 2.3 times the engagement of text-only posts, according to HubSpot. That means those posts are more likely to be shared. Infographics, those are liked and shared on social media 3 times more than any other type of content. Not only that, but photos showing people's faces attract us more than those that do not show them. Think about it. Aren't you more likely to share a post with a meaningful image rather than it being just a text post? And this goes back to an image being worth 1,000 words, especially when people are scrolling through their feed quickly and don't necessarily have time to read. Images can make a statement about a brand. High quality and relevant images can leave a positive impression about a brand. It shows they understand their audience, and that builds trust with them. The opposite is also true, though. If the images look poor quality, that can make the brand look unprofessional. If the images are irrelevant to the audience, that causes a disconnect, and that affects the bottom line. So what makes a quote-unquote good image? Well, when looking for an image, there's several things that you can consider to figure out if it's going to make a good image or not for your design project. And the first one is image relevance. It's always important to really understand the purpose of the work and what the client or your place of work is trying to accomplish. How do they want to come across? How do they want people to feel? When searching for images, ask yourself if the image is relevant to the purpose of the work and the messaging and the demographics of the audience, such as gender and age group, etc. This is also important if there's more than one audience or the work is being produced in more than one language. For example, let's say you're designing an ad in English that targets older white women, and you're also working on an ad with the same messaging but in Spanish. You wouldn't want to just use the same image of a seemingly white, non-Latino or non-Hispanic woman in both ads. For the ad in Spanish, you'd want to find a photo that's more relevant to Latinos or Hispanics. And why is that? So that they relate to that. Image style is another thing to take into consideration when looking for images. You can ask yourself, is this type of image in line with the brand's style? If the brand usually uses photos, for instance, you may not want to change styles and use an illustration, and vice versa. When it comes to icons, you want to use the same style that's normally used for the brand. For example, some icons are more like line drawings. Some are flat, some are more like 2D cartoons, and so forth. But the brand style could also mean that you only use photos that have backgrounds with solid colors, or that the people are a bit comical or never looking right at the camera. Yeah, I actually had a client who said that in their brand style guide. Or maybe you use only custom photos or illustrations. Copyright and licensing are another consideration. Always check the rights and the license to use them. And first off, don't think that because you found it in a Google Images search that you're free to use it. Most images are copyrighted, and therefore they're not able to be legally used without purchasing a license or obtaining written permission. And if you do otherwise, you open up your client and yourself to potential legal issues. I once had a client ask me about a stock photo after the stock company sent him a letter demanding thousands of dollars for using the image because it wasn't under his name. His previous designer had actually purchased it, and he was able to prove that, luckily. I'm sure it also helped that he was a lawyer. I think he was able to resolve the issue without paying, but this is a real issue, and I've heard about it from several designers. Now, some stock image companies will let you buy a license and then designate the client as the one licensing it instead of you. I just prefer to have the client buy the stock images to avoid potential issues. Anyway, sometimes you find the perfect image, but the licensing fee is cost prohibitive. So that makes it not even an option. And some licenses say you can only use the image for so many impressions, which could be a print quantity, or it could be impressions on a website, like visits. Who's going to track that? Who's going to license the image, you or the client? If you pay for and license that image, are you going to be held responsible by the stock photo company if your client exceeds that? And are you going to be tracking that information? I mean, these are important things to think about. Another thing to consider is permission. Some photographers or stock companies might require you to include a credit line with the photo, so you always want to pay attention to that. And if clients provide you with images, tell them to make darn sure they've gotten any necessary permission from the photographer. I actually put this in my contracts, that they've gotten that permission to use the photos. It isn't a big deal to add in any necessary permissions, but it's something to plan for and include space for somewhere in your document or on the web page it's being used on. It's not very practical, though, for a social media image. And depending on the situation, permission might also need to be obtained from people who appear in the photo. I think that might only pertain to photos not taken in public, but don't quote me on that. Still, the point is, you don't want to be responsible for using a photo of a person in your design work if your client was the one who was supposed to obtain that permission. There are also technical considerations for photos that you find or that the client provides. Resolution is another factor. Is the image high enough resolution for whatever dimensions you're going to use it at in print or on the web? I can't tell you how many times a client has provided what seems like the perfect image, other than it's just way too small to use in print. Clarity is another factor. Is the photo in focus and not blurry? And then how about crop? Does the photo have enough space to the side or above the subject matter where you're going to put text if that's what you plan to do with it? And you might have to Photoshop in some background or somehow tweak your design to compensate for that. And then how about adjustments? Will you need to adjust the color of any elements in the photo? When I think about photos for the podcast and for social media for my brand, I want to use blue and orange as much as possible. So sometimes it comes down to having to adjust colors that are used in the image. But the other thing is, does the photo have a lot of distractions in the background? And how easy will it be for you to minimize or remove them? If it will be difficult, it might be easier to just find another photo. Okay, so let's talk about where to find quality images that you can legally use. There's a lot of options. The obvious option is, of course, stock images. The price for stock photos varies greatly. They can be free, they can be low or high cost, and they can be based on a subscription model. Sometimes it depends on the size or how you plan to use the images too. For instance, editorial use can cost a lot more than most typical commercial licenses. There's also custom photography. You or the client could take the photos, or they could pay a photographer. You might also find good images on Flickr or another source that might be free or at a cost to use. Now, if you're sick of the same stock photo sites and you need some other stock image resources, be sure to check out my stock image directory. Just go to the website and then go to resources at creative-boost.com. You can filter by type of image, by cost, and even subject matter for some of them. I plan to add in many more options in the future. And if one you like isn't listed, be sure to email me at colleen@creative-boost.com and let me know so I can add it to the directory. And if it's helped you find images, I'd love to hear that as well.